Guys, start clapping. Make some noise. Louder than that. With this
Hi everybody, welcome back to What's Going On. Today's episode we have a very funny comic, Dan Pulzello. He's got a growing fan base on social media, over 100,000 followers on Instagram. Super funny guy. We talked about climate change and a bunch of different things that are affecting the world we're living in. So it's important for everybody to know, I think. I find it fascinating. This conversation was awesome. We talked about comedy a little bit too, but more importantly about climate change and how we can change things for the better. There's a remedy. There's things that we can do on our end. So listen to it. I found it amazing and fascinating and super funny too. So please get into it. Dan Pulzello, episode number 2. What's going on? Let's go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to What's Going On, your podcast about what's going on in comedy, what's going on in the world, what's going on in the economy, all the kind of things that are bothering you and you can't sleep because the world's going to end. This is your host, Santi Espinosa. You know the intro of the credits of the people that I'm going to talk to on this podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have this guest today. Super funny guy, and I just can't wait to talk to him. So please give a warm welcome to Dan Pulzello, everybody.
Hello from multiple camera angles. Hello, everybody.
Hell yeah.
1, 2.
And shout out to Broadway Comedy Club for letting me do this here. Audio's recording. Cameras are recording. We are in business, baby. Dan, thank you for doing the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is
thank you for your patience.
Excited to sit down, chop it up. We haven't seen each other in 2 weeks.
That's right.
A lot can happen in that amount of time.
That's right. We went to do a one-nighter at Atlantic City.
Yes.
And it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking before we started recording how you get to know a comic or a person on a road trip very well.
Yes, very intimately, sometimes too intimately. Sometimes you realize these people are crazy, but this time, no, it worked out. It was great.
It was great.
We got to know each other, kicked it off. Molly Brenner was there as well.
Shout out to Molly Brenner.
Yeah.
It was so much fun, and our drive to the comedy club, talk about comedy, talked about how the open mic scene it's incredibly painful.
Yes.
It's hard.
It's really difficult to describe to people who have not experienced it.
Yeah.
Just the drudgery and the awkwardness and the boringness. It's a lot. Most people don't go through anything even remotely close to that.
The open mic comedy scene is what I'd like to say a therapy for the crazy.
There are some really clinically insane, convicted people who are out of jail, alcoholics, really insane, clinically. Most of the people very nice, and I'm still friends with them to this day.
Same.
But all it takes is 3 or 4 crazies that you encounter, and it's I think differently about the human species as a whole now.
Yeah. The comedy scene is something that if you're having second thoughts about what am I doing? What's going on in my life? Go to an open mic. Wherever you're from.
Oh my God. Imagine how much better you'll feel. Just I don't have that many problems.
On a second thought.
I guess, yeah, it's not that bad.
So my wife's kind of crazy. It's going to be fine.
So I'm bored at work sometimes. That's completely fine. That is a reasonable thing to feel at work.
Yeah, it's insane. So if you feel bad about your life or yourself, go to an open mic. And if you still want to do stand-up after doing that, you're also crazy.
Yes. It is a good filtering mechanism.
Yes.
Because anybody who watches it and is that's for me, they are a special type of person.
You're a very smart person. I got to talk to you for 2 hours, 4 hours total.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot more than that because we had a massive traffic jam going to Atlantic City.
Yes.
So it was a little bit of a 6-hour drive in a car, talk about comedy, doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated with your knowledge on climate change.
Yep.
And just very interesting stuff. And it was fascinating to me because I guess comedians, we're kind of not. I wouldn't peg comics as being my go-to source for important things.
Yes.
But somehow when you were talking about climate change and giving me all these facts and all these things, I'm I got to get to know Dan.
Who is this person that is just hoarding very unfortunate statistics?
He knows something I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to become friends with this guy that may actually have some leading indicators on when to get the hell out of New York City.
Yeah. How about this? We'll do like a subscription service where it's just like I'll just text you once a month and just be like, it's not this month. Like, keep living your life.
I want to send you like the monthly text, like, how are we doing with the water levels?
Yeah. And then we get to 2055, 2065, then it'll be like, hey, February, we're like, pack your bags, we're going.
So so let's start with a very simple question. Climate change, is it real? Is it not real?
It is. And my entrance to it was just it's a weird, I went to a Catholic high school, and freshman biology, they were like, all right, movie time, An Inconvenient Truth. So already that's like pretty wild. Like the fact that was shown to me in high school, and the movie like fundamentally changes. I'm probably one of the 30 people, it's 30 kids in my class. I'm probably the only one who took all of the information on, not in like I'm smart, I'm retaining it, but in terms of like, I have an anxiety disorder. I was like, immediately started worrying about it. And I mean, is it real? Like, there's a famous hockey stick graph that Al Gore uses, and he uses it really well in the documentary. He's like, here is all of human history. And humans have only been around 20,000 years. We've been thriving for, I don't know, since Mesopotamia. So what's that, like 5,000 BC? So like, we're really, you think that humans have been around forever. Like, it's a 10,000 year window.
Yeah. And
he's like, here is the climate throughout pre-humans, post-humans, and it's all in this like really nice range of, however they measure it, and like temperatures and CO2 levels. And then you see the CO2 levels shoot up at the Industrial Revolution, and then you see temperatures start to shoot up. And it's just a 1-to-1. The more carbon dioxide there is in the air, the hotter it's going to get. How much hotter? Debatable. When? Debatable. But that's the inconvenient truth is like, for every molecule of CO2 that we emit into the atmosphere, it's going to get warmer. The Earth has a bunch of carbon like feedback loops where it's like, oh, if we just emit carbon, then the trees will absorb it. And the trees do absorb it to a point. But now all the trees are full.
Yeah.
And every molecule of carbon that we emit is like, it's outside of this carbon loop. And it's like, think of a tub that's overflowing, right? Or you have a tub and there's a drain and you turn on the faucet, right? So the faucet is carbon. It's coming, out of everything that we do. And it's going like out of the faucet through the drain. There's no issues. But then we start to clog it up and add more water at the same time, so the tub starts to fill. And that's the point that we're at, is like the tub is overflowing.
Turn that water off and start with the buckets and just drain that.
Yeah, so the rate that we're emitting carbon, that's getting higher. The Earth's ability to absorb carbon, for every tree that we cut down, we remove more of the Earth's ability to absorb carbon. So we're we're ripping the lungs out and we're shoving more carbon in. So it's like, there's a bunch of reasons for why the CO2 is going up, but it's burning fossil fuels is like, I think, the main driver, to simplify.
That's a great hook, because we only got 30 minutes for this. And I'm trying to get like any awareness, because the podcast is what's going on. And it started as a comedy driven thing, but now I want to get to know these facts, because it's what's going to drive my housing for the next 30 to 40. I mean, I'm not sure if New York will be here.
Yeah, it's a good
in
question.
10 years from now. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I know there's people that are like, God, crazy. Come on. New York's going to be here forever. We don't know, because we're still here. We live here. But there is credible evidence by what you're saying.
Yeah.
That the levels of water and like all these sort of things that we're putting into the air, into the atmosphere, is hotter. It's affecting like places like New York.
Yes.
Like Florida.
And not every place is going to be affected equally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the countermeasures we could do as New Yorkers to soften the blow of where we're going? Because it seems to me that where we're going is it's not a good place.
There's a couple really, so I'm kind of like donate, and I just went to so Climate Week is this week. I'm not sure when you're releasing this, but it's like September.
Probably this weekend.
Yeah, so September, like the UN is currently meeting related to fossil fuels.
Okay.
Al Gore's in town, Gavin Newsom's in town, Justin Trudeau's in town. They're all addressing the UN General Assembly.
JT?
Yeah, he's not having a good week. That's its own 30 minutes. Fucking Canada has had a fucking wild year.
Oh, yeah.
It's all just like peaks and valleys and stuff. So practical, what can you do? It's fund these organizations, and this is going to sound like extremist, fund organizations like Climate Defiance, Sunrise Movement, Climate Emergency Fund, Extinction Rebellion. They're like probably the furthest fringe, Just Stop Oil. These are all organizations that are all engaging in, it's called direct action.
Okay.
So they're identifying people who are releasing, harmful policies, like scaling back decarbonization measures. Some of the actions that Climate Defiance recently engaged in is they shut down the headquarters of Bank of America. Bank of America, Citibank, they did it on separate days. The major banks, are major funders of fossil fuel extraction projects. If you have a company like Exxon who's like, I would like to drill oil out of the ground, I'm going to buy a bunch of equipment to do it. How do you buy the equipment? You take out loans from these banks. The banks give you favorable loans. So one of the levers that the climate activists are trying to go for is to stop funding for new fossil fuel projects. That's kind of like one area to stop it. There's another one. There's a pipeline that was recently approved by Congress called the MVP pipeline. I mean, there are climate activists like chaining themselves to this pipeline so that to slow or even completely draw out, like for every day that you stop the pipeline being built, it's another day of expenses. It makes it more, it pushes it along and like, this isn't profitable anymore. It was never profitable. It's all propped up by subsidies for the fossil fuel companies. And also all of these profits aren't taking into account the negative side effects that the pollution in the air causes to the populace, to say nothing of the 6 million people that die every year from inhaling fossil fuel pollution. Think of like India and China, places where the fucking sky is black. Why is the sky black?
Yeah.
Probably
Mexico City.
Exactly. And to people who haven't experienced, I've never experienced it directly. But like these are particles in the air that are shortening lifespans by like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I go to Bogota in Colombia. Dude, Bogota, it's crazy. I mean, New York is not a pinnacle, like the best.
No.
Compared to Bogota, it's like you could tell the air is different, which is crazy to me because New York is already pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You go to Bogota, it's like there are so many vehicles that just are polluting the air, and the air you're breathing. It's like no wonder there's like all these lung capacity problems. There's all these disease. There's all these issues associated with breathing. It's just, and that's the other part of the world that they're trying to figure out what they're doing. Because this is where it gets really complicated to me.
Yes. Who's going to make these changes? And
how are you going to make these changes? How are you going to tell China that is a developing country, almost like they got lots of cash now.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, look at the U.S. You guys had a whole couple of decades to become this superpower.
Yeah.
It's our turn. Don't tell me to stop my machinery.
Yeah, and then there's the argument also that like for every and this is all math. It's like very general, and like I'm sure that I'm wrong about like a bunch of this, but like this is my understanding of it. For every piece of coal that's burnt in China, like yes, it's hurting the air that people are breathing, and that might bring down life expectancy. But you cannot deny that these factories are. I mean, the explosion in the increase in quality of life in China. It's one of the in human history, China's industrialization brings, I don't know, fucking 500 million, 300 million, let's say it's 100 million out of extreme poverty into middle class.
Got it.
We're all, everybody's happy about that, right? We want to have the most, the highest living standard for the highest amount of people possible. I don't have a compelling answer to like what to say to China, but here's the math, right? The U.S. is the largest historical emitter of greenhouse gases. So if you were to count today, hey, guess what? China is emitting more than, I think, a bunch of other countries combined. I don't know if it's like the U.S. and a bunch of other countries, but like China is number one in emissions by a very wide margin. Historically, the U.S. has been the largest emitter. So that's a complicated fact to even hold in your brain, right? So like China, stop what you're doing now, and the U.S. undo what you did. Like,
hey, can you go back in like a time machine and just slow down?
Yeah. So there's like, because as all of this shit is happening, there's obviously the green energy revolution, which is occurring. So I mean, practical steps that Americans can take. It is the reason that you fund these organizations that are engaging in direct action is because there are tangible results. This week, something that occurred was President Biden signed an executive order establishing like a civilian climate corps, which is 20,000 people who now there's budget to hire 20,000 people within the federal government who can work on resiliency projects like decarbonization projects, disaster relief stuff from all of these climate fueled storms and stuff. And the climate conservation corps or whatever it's called, like CCC, like this 20,000 person group, that was a direct proposal of the Sunrise Movement, which are all of these like political organizations.
I've heard about it, yeah.
Yeah, and they're the ones who are putting pressure on the politicians, right? So they are, I mean, clean up your own yard before you clean up somebody else's yard,
of course,
right? And then like there's treaties that can be signed that like I think the EU has stuff in the works of like,
they're tough.
Yeah, the EU is like, I mean, there's. I visited Scotland. The amount of wind turbines in that, like, I think they're getting like fucking close to 100%.
That's
like,
crazy.
Yeah, South Australia, where my wife is from, they just like on Twitter I saw they were almost at like 100% renewables for like a day. Obviously, it doesn't like last for that long, but all from solar and stuff. So that's. I have no answer for China. I know that the answer.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, the answer is not Trump. Like, very obviously, like we should be doing everything that we can to keep
it's
the
like,
guy.
I don't know.
Yeah,
not Trump.
It's not like he's
not the answer.
And the U.S. is really unique in that, and this is what I mean, and I think you're receptive to like talking about global warming because you have the international perspective.
Yes.
I have an international perspective. My wife is Australian. It's not, so I've been to other countries. I've spent a little bit of time in a couple of different places. Like the Republican Party in America, they are climate psychopaths.
Well, they don't think it exists.
They don't think it exists. They
don't think it's real.
Yeah, and that is so. That's not normal. It's really the only part. The UK gets like close with their conservative party. I'd say like maybe Brazil a little bit. Russia, obviously, Russia's one party state, but the U.S. Republican establishment. The never Trumpers and the Trumpers. There's no climate plan. I'm sure there's some, but like climate doesn't even show up in their top 10 list of priorities. The Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords. That was like the first thing. I don't know if it was the first thing they did, but
one of the many monumental stupid things he did.
And that was the one time the globe came together and all they did was say like, we should stop it from getting to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That was all that they did. They didn't say like, here's the plan to do it. They were just like, let's all agree on a number. 1.5. Great.
Yeah.
And Trump was like, I don't even agree with that. So that's vote Democrat. They're obviously like fucking, brutal. And Joe Biden is a puppet and he's, has Alzheimer's, but he's not Trump.
People don't listen. And I think that this is what you said something key is like being willing to listen to a person that has ideas and knowledge about, things that will matter in a couple years from now. Like, I was talking to you in the car when we were driving back from Atlantic City. I plan to have a family.
Yeah, I think I will probably too. And a lot of climate researchers have kids.
Yeah. So the point is, if you're trying to have people come, brand new people, what are you going to tell them? It's like, hey, buddy, good to see you.
Yeah. Hey.
You're a cute baby.
Polar bears don't exist anymore, which would also be like the least of their worries. But like, yeah, it's
They're gonna be like, "Hey, Dad, what's up with like everything being on fire?" Like, listen, I just didn't think it was a thing. Didn't exist.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: New York.
Yeah.
We live in New York. We're comedians doing stand-up, pursuing our dreams
Yes.
of making a change with one laugh at a time, whatever you want to lead.
Which is also an extremely carbon-intensive lifestyle.
Yes.
So I am a hypocrite, and everybody who engages in the climate movement is a hypocrite in the same way that Republicans who vote against abortions are paying for abortions. We're all fucking hypocrites, but we're trying to move the needle.
It's a two-faced thing where like we should be responsible, but let me just figure out how to get it with this open mic.
Exactly.
So, or get to the show. But I understand that. Like, there is never going to be a level of perfection where, like, if you were truly like one of those tree hugging, just people that are like Greenpeace,
I
like,
would be in the woods.
you would be somewhere and not in New York.
Yeah.
But that's what I like about you because you live a lifestyle that I would identify with the ideas that I would like to promote, and I'd like to be able to, I guess, remedy whatever the hell we can remedy.
Yes.
So my wife is like, she listens to a lot of information about climate change and all this stuff.
Yes.
She has said to me something that's very fascinating. I want to run this by you. If we planted trees, or if in New York, if every building in New York had X amount of trees,
yes,
we would help. New York would basically become like the biggest jungle. Like I don't know how what would change if we had like trees just all over the place, but that would be a practical thing that people can do.
No one is saying well, I'm team all of the solutions. So we need more trees. We need to emit less carbon. I'm in the extreme category of I think it's going to get to a point where we're going to have to start emitting particles into the atmosphere to reflect sunlight away. It's called geoengineering. There's a lot of people who are like, we don't understand the science of like, I'm like, fucking try it. Try it for a year. I am like, all the shit that's coming down the pipeline, like, and it's important to say what is coming down the pipeline. Worse forest fires, worse floods, more intense hurricanes, more intense droughts, and the climate refugees that will come from all of these events hitting places that don't have the infrastructure to sustain themselves. There are studies that say a billion climate refugees by 2050. That's a billion people who are displaced, mostly in the global south. That's like Africa, South America, like Asia, parts of Asia, like a billion climate refugees by 2050. That's what we're up against. And if you look at
I know Canada wants immigrants, but that's a lot.
That's a lot. And for reference, like the Arab Spring and the Muslim migrations from the Middle East into Europe that like literally like, I mean, you know, all of those scenes of like migrant camps and stuff, like that was a couple million people.
Yeah.
So that's the important for scale. If it was 20 million people, it was not 50 billion.
Yes.
So that's the scale of what is going to occur. And I wish racists knew more about that because, and I write a joke about it.
One of those people from South America coming over here.
Listen,
we're talking about
if you don't like a couple of them, like a couple of people from South America, like where are these people going to go? They're going to go to the highly developed nation. And I'm not saying that should be the motivate. Like there are so many other reasons for it, but like we're talking about mass population movement. What happens when populations move a lot? Crime, wars, famine, like moving a bunch of people from one place to another in an unstructured way is going to lead to a lot of loss of life. That's important. What can we do in New York? There's a bunch of there's adaptation and then there's mitigation. So mitigation would be like there's a tax that's proposed that's like to increase the price of cars coming into the city. It's like a carbon tax. The UK has something like in London where like I'm not really sure of what the legislation is, but it's like less cars on the road or de-incentivize cars being on the road because you can get into New York via mass transit. There's no excuse. Like people obviously can drive and stuff, or even if you're driving once a week and taking mass transit 3 times a week. Like, so there are take mass transit, use your car less. Planting trees, I'm fucking down for it. Paint the fucking streets and buildings white so that they reflect more sunlight so that we're able to manage heat waves, the heat waves that are coming, like easier. seawalls. That's something that's going to have to be built. The East River currently is it was called the East River Park. It's closed because they are building like a storm drainage thing so that the Lower East Side of Manhattan does not flood again in the way that it did for Hurricane Sandy. So that's already like we're already constructing things that are going to help avoid.
That's relatively good news.
It is, yeah. There's it should not be all doom and gloom. Like the green energy revolution is happening way faster than anybody anticipated. Solar, the price of solar is going down, and even some of the projections of like where are we headed, like some scientists are taking apocalypse off of the table. Like there were projections of like if we continue as normal, called like business as usual, then we could head for like 10 degrees of warming, and it
which
seems
would
like
be lethal.
That's like that's extinction. So it looks like humans might not go extinct. That's nice, and every molecule of carbon that we stop emitting into the atmosphere will improve the quality of life for like a ton of people. The window is small. The window is closing. This year, it's breaking a ton of fucking records. And scientists, that's the other thing too, is there's so much uncertainty. A lot of scientists are looking at the sea ice in Antarctica and they're like, this is the lowest that we've ever seen and we don't know why.
Yeah.
Same for Arctic ocean temperatures. They're off of the charts. I follow a couple scientists on Twitter. They're like, we need to keep making new graphs because like the y-axis, it's extending beyond like, so there's a bunch of like really worrying things that scientists haven't even really wrapped their heads around like what it is. So like all of that to say, there's a bunch of stuff that we know is going to happen. We don't know how fast it's going to happen, but it's like shut all of that out of your mind and donate to people who are engaging in direct action. Engage in direct action because that will
plant a fucking tree.
Plant a fucking tree.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's just practical stuff because this podcast could be 7 hours because there's so much that I would like to know.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the timing. Here's the thing that happens to me that if I read too much about this stuff, if I get too much into
Bums you out.
It makes me so anxious.
Yes.
It paralyzes me.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that if someone's like, hey, you want to go do a show at Atlantic City? I'm like, we're going to die.
Yeah. What's the point?
So that's why it's kind of negligent to some degree. It's like,
it's a defense mechanism.
I don't want to know too much.
Yeah, it's to survive. It's like, how is everybody going to do their jobs if you're thinking about dying? It's not possible.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Learn about it. Give it an appropriate amount of worry. Realize that there's hope. And like despair doesn't serve a purpose.
I'll give you an example to wrap things up.
And it's easy to say that, obviously. And this is through therapy and stuff. I'm like, I'm feeling better about things.
You seem to be calm when you're talking about shit that's super heavy on a global scale.
Yeah.
Which that's like somehow I'm like, I got home after that road trip.
Yeah.
And I woke up my wife and I was like, hey, this guy, we should talk to this guy. Because he somehow it's like crazy, but I'm not like, I'm going to sleep tonight. Mm-hmm. So that's what I appreciated about our conversation. What I wanted to ask you is, so we're here in this critical juncture.
Yeah. Closing window
for a lot of things that we can. There's things that we can do, as you just mentioned, to soften or to flatten the curve.
Yeah, eat less meat too. If you can go vegan, go vegan. I'm not vegan. I don't eat red meat anymore. That's like my sacrifice, and I'll do less.
Cut back.
Yeah,
baby steps.
Yes,
baby steps.
Yeah.
So the reason why sometimes I think that, for me, for instance, I think that this is going to be, when it hits us, is going to be like, holy. It was a reaction I had when COVID started.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. My wife had left. She was going to Montreal, and she called me like in a panic. She was like, you got to get your shit. Come to Canada. It's going to be bad. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's like a little virus. Oh, what do you think?
Yeah. It's in South Korea. It's not even here. I mean, there's the one guy in the Bronx, but it's just.
It's a 1K. Like, what are you talking? I downplayed it to a level of like, come on, what are you talking? Are you talking crazy?
Yeah.
You're one of the crazy people now? And I'm like, don't worry. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to buy some soup. I'm going to buy some saltine crackers. It's going to be fine. And within a couple days, I was like, I got to go to Canada. And even going to Canada, I was like, this is going to be a couple months. I never in a million years expected it to be such a dramatic and structural shift in the way that society behaves and the way that we analyze data, the way that we perceive certain things. So dire things like this shouldn't be taken lightly.
Yes.
And I think we need more. My comedy is certainly not about this.
I haven't written a single good climate change joke in my life.
Is it because it's a bummer?
I don't know. I rarely am able to choose the topics that I'm able to make funny. It's usually just like fucking relationship stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not funny. Climate change is. I haven't heard any good climate change humor, really.
The only climate change jokes that I used to like, and I don't think I like it anymore, was like, oh yeah, climate change. It was even not even climate change. It was global warming. It's like, global warming is great for Canada. I'm gonna keep smoking because it's too cold in this bitch.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, funny. But also, damn.
Yeah, I also there is one good climate change joke, and it's Cat Williams, and he's like, people. I'm not going to do the voice. He's a very funny black comedian.
Please.
He goes,
You're gonna go
so
full
funny. He's like, climate change isn't real. Climate change isn't real, motherfucker. What happened to snowmen? I used to be able to, I would make a snowman in October and that motherfucker would be there until March. What happened to snowmen?
That is great.
What happened to snow? We used to make fucking, it still snows, but that's,
not to the degree of, I mean,
no.
It's things have changed. I mean, it's undeniable. Give it up for a fly that kept bugging us the whole episode. Yeah. This is all fascinating stuff. And listen, so, to wrap things up a little bit, because I want to make this short and sweet. You have a growing audience on social media, on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And what you do is you contrast the way Americans think and the way the Europeans think.
Yes.
How are you, because you're becoming an influencer.
Against my will.
All
I want to do is stand up.
Yeah.
The algorithm's like, nah, you got to put on a scarf.
We want you to influence.
Yeah.
We don't want you to do jokes. We want you to influence. How are you going to use that power?
It's a good question. I mean, I posted stories of, I went to a climate march last Sunday, so I posted stories about that. I'm on my way to a dinner, like a fundraiser dinner thing that I got invited to after I participated in the march. I do make jokes within the series, so that's fun. I think.
I love your jokes.
There's
They're
a
really
couple.
funny.
There's a couple climate change jokes I'm able to make stand up. I cannot. It's not funny in the room. It's never climate change is never funny. So I've been able to like work it in like a little bit. Like I'll probably just keep posting about. I'll probably crank up the intensity, give like more specific asks of like, here are organizations that I support, and I'm sure by the time this comes out, one of these organizations is gonna have like run over a puppy and be like, not cool anymore or whatever. But like
things are changing.
Yeah, just put. I'm the momentum. It's like there are people who are like working to make the changes. We all just got to get on the fucking boat and start moving. So it'll probably be just like more updates about that. Probably not like a ton of candid material about it. But I do make some jokes about it. I'll post stories on it when I'm like physically involved in it. I don't want to look like I'm like proselytizing or like, preaching or being like holier than thou. Yeah. But also like the fucking world's on fire. So who cares about that? So I'll probably I do owe it. And I think people who like my humor are like-minded. I'm not really I'm preaching to the converted,
Got it. You're not trying to convert someone from the middle of Texas who doesn't believe in any of this.
But I'm not gonna shy away from that topic in social media. I do, probably could be doing more. I'm a person. I'll keep learning. Maybe next year it'll just I won't even be doing stand up. It'll just be like me in a fucking bunker.
I'll text you, bro. I will be texting you. Believe you me, I'm gonna be the one that's like, where are we at with the stuff?
Yeah.
'Cause I believe in those things, but I also want to make it in comedy.
It's a tough dude, and even
it's one of those thoughts that messes with my head.
Yeah.
Every day.
Well, how about this? Fucking Jerry Seinfeld, advice that comedians give, just do the work. It's just do the work was advice that you could give to people in a stable climate. None of this, you know what I mean? Just keep your head down, keep working. It'll all work out. You wrote that in a stable climate. Just do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life. If the climate is stable, it's we're entering the world that we knew is gone. The world that's happening, we can make it less bad.
I like that.
I'm gonna
I
keep
like that,
telling
Dan.
jokes,
You're a
though.
very smart person. I appreciate this conversation, man. I hope to hear jokes about climate change in your stand-up very soon.
We'll see.
I mean, I follow you on Instagram. I love everything you do on social media.
Thanks,
so,
man. I appreciate it.
So keep doing that. So is there anything we'd like to say before we go? I feel that podcasts with comedians don't have to be funny, first of all. So just for you,
Yeah.
for the people, they're like, well, this wasn't funny. What's
There
going on?
were
You-
some
There was
jokes,
a
yeah.
couple things that were funny.
Mhm.
We're going to tell you something that happened to us. So when we were driving from New York to Atlantic City,
Yep.
we're just sharing comedy stories.
Yes.
And I was telling you that I forget there's comedians at the open mic level that will forever live in our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have passed away.
A bunch of them have. They really didn't take care of themselves.
A bunch of them do it anymore. But I don't remember the name of this person.
Yes.
But they used to have a joke about how comedy was hard. It's like, comedy is hard. Like my dick. And that joke on that road trip became so brilliant.
Yes.
Because the moment, like everything about it was great. That it transcended the person's comedy
Yeah,
career.
who might not even be doing comedy anymore. We have no idea who said this or where they are, but there's some nuggets like that exist from open mics.
Can you share one of the most unforgettable moments?
Yes. We all were like backstage and we were like, we should say it on stage. Like, and you hosted.
Yeah.
And so you went up first. And then I'm going through like my notes. Molly's like going through her notes. Like I'm up next. And then at some point, I think like, and you're doing well, like in the set, you're like hosting, getting people involved, and you just dropped the line. You're like, at some point, you're just like,
Make any sense?
it didn't make any sense. You didn't work it into anything. I think it was probably just like, yes, I'm Colombian. Man, comedy's hard. Like my dick. And then just kept going. And I was in the back. I was like, no, he fucking did it. That is
And
absolutely.
I looked at you guys and I pointed. And Molly was loose. She was like,
Yeah, we. And there were a lot of like really confused Atlantic City boomers who were like, "What? I guess it is like your dick. Maybe it is. I don't know." And then you moved on, but that was joyful,
that
very
was beautiful.
Yeah.
A beautiful moment. So for those of you who came for the comedy, we'll give you something. We gave you something.
Climate change is hard.
Climate.
It's hard like something else, man. I don't even know what it's hard like. It's hard like, oh, I guess it's hard like my dick. I guess that's also hard like my dick.
Oh, Dan, thank you so much, bro. I appreciate
Yeah.
you. Keep killing it.
Thanks for having
This
me,
is
man.
what's going on. Follow Dan on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Dan Pulzello.
He doesn't need this because he's already got too many. I'm just doing it out of courtesy, but he doesn't need these followers.
Come
These 10
on.
people.
Join me.
All right. Follow Dan. Follow me on social media, Santiago Comedy. And if you like this podcast, make sure you write an Apple review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube. And thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Dan, appreciate you, man.
See you guys.
Bye. And thank you, Broadway Comedy Club.
Okay, guys, start clapping. Make some noise. Louder than that. Time for this campaign. That's what I know.